Hello, and welcome back to part 3 of getting ready for chicken breeding season. Don't mind my messy background. I'm busy and I don't have time to clean house. Forget that stuff. Okay, today I'm going to talk about feed. This can be a deep dive of squirrel hole maze. I mean, feed and feeding can be a really big deal, and there's a lot of stuff out on the internet that isn't always 100% accurate. Okay, but what we're gonna do today, we could be here all day talking about every teeny little bit of stuff for feeding your chickens. Okay, I don't think any of us have time to do that right now. It's spring. I got stuff to do. But we are going to compare 2 different feed tags. I'm going to show you the things that you need to look for and the most important parts. A lot of what should you feed is going to depend on your farm, your flock, your goals. What are you trying to get out of your chickens? And what's available to you in your area. Okay, those are all big factors. Another one is, what's your budget? So there's a lot of factors to consider. I'm just going to give you some food for thought. A lot of what I'm going to say today is based on what I have heard from Jeff Mattocks, who is the poultry nutritionist for Fertrell Feeds, and what he recommends. He has written, I think, 2 books now about poultry and feeding and managing them, and he works with a lot of pastured poultry and organic producers, and so they have a lot of regulations and things, what they can and can't do and have and not have in their feeds. So but if I say something that's wrong or inaccurate, it's not Jeff's fault. That's on me. Okay, I'll take full responsibility for making a mistake. So don't go off on Jeff. I will put a lot of links down below to where you can find Jeff and listen to his talks. I think it's a Facebook page about poultry nutrition. I don't believe he has an actual YouTube channel, but he is on several poultry podcasts and YouTube channels frequently, answering questions and helping people out. And we really appreciate all of Jeff's experience and knowledge in his field. Today we're going to compare 2 layer feeds. They are at opposite ends of price range. So this first one is the low end price range, and that's the guaranteed analysis. I have blacked out the brand because the brand is not as big a deal as what's in the feed. Okay, there's the ingredients. Okay, and then this is a feed at the top end of the price range. This one is touted as being designed to be fed to free-range hens, and it does say that you can cut it with scratch. There's all the ingredients. So we're going to talk about these, and we're going to talk about some other options. So first of all, let's figure out what's your goal with your chickens. In this series of videos, I am looking at breeding show quality birds. Okay, that's the goal for this group. That means that they need to be fertile. They need to have good hatchability. The chicks need to be vigorous and grow well. We will get into feeding chicks when we get that far. when we get to the chick stage. And they need to grow up and be able to fulfill their genetic potential. And that starts way before the hen lays that first egg that you collect to hatch. Okay, with her nutrition. For some of y'all, maybe you just have a backyard flock and you just think it would be fun to hatch a few chicks instead of buying new ones this year. And that's fine. That's fine. You might have some issues, you might not. Kind of just depends on your circumstances, what you're usually feeding. Some folks are free-ranging and doing pasture, and their birds are doing really well. Other folks may have issues. Maybe they don't have good fertility or good hatchability, and there's a lot of things in the hatching window that could be the issue. But nutrition is the base of everything. And if we don't have good nutrition, we don't have good anything. So, Jeff's recommendation is for breeder hens, 18 to 20% protein. But he says that it's not just the total protein we need to be looking at. We need to be looking at the amino acids. Those are the building blocks of protein. And there are some amino acids that your body, people and other animals, birds, we're talking about chickens, but there's some amino acids that they can take these over here and put them together just right and make this amino acid that they need over here. Okay, but there are some amino acids that they can't do that, and they have to have those amino acids in their feed in the right amounts, because they can't make them out of anything else. Okay, I had to go print some stuff out from Jeff's Poultry Nutrition Facebook page, their files, which I don't know how you can see the files if you're on a phone or in an app, but if you look at the site on the computer at the top, there's some different little options, and one is files, and you'll find all of these things there. So one of the things that Jeff does is he changes feeds between summer and winter because temperatures, day length, things like that are going to change the requirements that the birds have. I'm going to just look at his summer layer breeder feed, and his recommendation is 18% protein. It's actually 18.8, so it's almost 19% protein, with just over 6% fat and 5% fiber, with vitamin A of 9,100 KIU, which I think is 100,000 international units per pound, and 91 international units of vitamin E, and 0.5% methionine. Methionine is one of those really super important amino acids that we really need. I think the page got cut off because I don't see the lysine on that list. But, so let's compare those things to our two feed samples. Okay. I gotta find some little thing here so I can mark. Okay. Our less expensive, what a lot of folks are buying, just that reversed? Here, let me fix it. Okay, I think that's focused. You can see here that this is only 16% protein, so it's a little low in protein. It does have plenty of lysine, I think, 0.6%. We'll have to check that. And then methionine is really low at only 0.3%. Jeff's recommended summer layer breeder feed is 0.5%. Okay, and it's very low in fat, 2.5%. It's very high in fiber at 8%. So that's maybe not the best feed for feeding your breeder layers. Now this is a fairly expensive feed. It's the top end of what's available to me here where I live. But you can see 21% protein, so it's much higher than the other feed. The lysine is a full 1%, so that's quite a bit more than the less expensive feed. The methionine is 0.32%, so it could still be more, according to Jeff, what he's recommending as being 0.5%. It has 3.5% fat and 4.5% fiber, so a lot. Let's see, what was the less expensive feed? Had 2.5% fat, so more fat and more fiber and a lot less fiber. The calcium listed on our less expensive feed is 3.9, which is about the same here. The phosphorus is the same at 0.45%. The salt maximum is 0.65 in the less expensive feed and 0.8 in this more expensive one. The other things that are listed here are not listed on the other 16% layer feed. And the selenium. Is there selenium? No, they didn't even put the selenium on there. That's kind of crazy, because so they might not be adding selenium. I happen to live in a selenium deficient area, and selenium is very important, especially in, like, I have dairy goats, and they really need a lot of selenium to be fertile, to be able to carry their babies to full term, and stuff like that. So I don't know, I don't think it's much different, even though we're talking chickens. We'll look at some of the other things listed here. Let me find my other page. I printed out a page from Jeff's files on his Facebook group. And these are breeder nutritional requirements. And we're going to compare our two feeds to what Jeff has listed. Jeff says vitamin A should be 6,818, and our 21% protein feed, that higher end feed, it still falls short. It's only got 4,000 units per pound. And the less expensive feed, the 16%, doesn't even list any vitamins or other minerals. Okay, so vitamin D, Jeff's suggestion is 1,363. this 21% protein feed is listing 2,500 international units per pound. Unfortunately, Jeff's page does not list the measurement he's using, but I'm thinking it's probably the same. 1,363 international units, that's abbreviated IU, per pound of feed. So this feed has a lot more vitamin D3 than what Jeff's recommending as the requirement. I don't know if there's anything bad about having too much vitamin D. Could be, I guess, if you accumulated too much. But we do need vitamin D to process all that calcium that the hens need to be eating to make all those eggshells. Vitamin E. So Jeff's recommended amount is 27.2. And the 21% protein feed has 20 international units per pound. So it's a little bit low yet. And then this feed does have some bacteria added to it, lactobacillus, and a couple of other ones whose big fat Latin names I can't pronounce, so I won't even try. And Jeff has not added any of that to this page. So, I mean, it's really nice, especially if your birds can't free range or don't get a lot of fresh feed or something, that they have those extra probiotics. But 100%, do we need to add them to feed? I don't know. Now, things that are not listed on this feed tag that Jeff is recommending or saying is required is vitamin K, 2.3, manganese, 100 parts per million. Oh, and you know what? I just realized he does have this on here. It is international units per pound of feed for vitamin A, vitamin D, E, and K. So I just didn't notice it was in parentheses over next to the name. I was looking for it next to the numbers like it is on the feed tags. Okay. Manganese, 100 parts per million. Zinc, 100 parts per million. Iron, 60 parts per million. Copper, 10 parts per million. And selenium, 0.4 parts per million. Now, if I remember correctly from some other things that I have read, by law, they cannot add more than 0.3% parts per million of selenium to packaged feeds for anything, because selenium can accumulate and become toxic. And there's no cure for that. It's like they're poisoned. But like I said, I live in a very selenium deficient area, and you really need selenium for all your fertility and growth factors. So that might be a little hard to come by. This 21% protein feed does have 0.3 parts per million added. So it could use a little bit more, but I don't think legally they can add it. Jeff's list also includes iodine at 2 parts per million and cobalt at 0.5 parts per million. And those are all things that are not listed on the feed tags. Feed tags usually just have printed what they are required by law to have on them. And those laws can vary from one state to another. So you could live in a state where some of this isn't required to be on a feed tag. They are required to put in all of the ingredients in the feed. I don't always really look hard at that sort of thing. This one has a lot of different kinds of calcium and you know, corn and soy and distiller's grains and a lot of vitamins and mineral mixes added to it. So I have been feeding this 21% feed for a while now. I do like it. I like how my birds look on it and how they're laying as our days get longer. Of course, we don't lay too much in the winter if you don't have extra light. So, and they normally have good shell quality and good hatchability. So, that 16% protein feed. Now, it does fall pretty short in some departments, and it's got what I think is way too much fiber for chickens. But if you just have a little backyard flock that you are supplementing with table scraps, especially meat and fat scraps from your dinner table, from your cooking, the last 5 bites that your toddler didn't eat, those sorts of things, along with maybe some fresh greens and things, this could be very well a nice base feed for you because you're supplementing with other things that can kind of make up for the amino acids and protein and stuff that the feed itself doesn't have in it. I have way too many chickens, and I'm a one-person household, so I don't have a lot of meat scrap or food scraps, other than, you know, trimming produce and that kind of stuff, or maybe if there's a little extra too much fat, more than I want to eat on something. So that doesn't really work for me, so I really need to have a feed that is going to provide pretty much everything my birds need. And I'm going to read off Jeff, in his files on that Facebook page, has put up what he considers perfect feed rations. And he did this for people that wanted to mix their own feeds. And so I'm looking at the one he put together as a breeder layer. It's 18% protein. And it has corn, soybean, wheat, oats, alfalfa. He's added limestone for the calcium, some vegetable fat. Fertrell makes a couple of feed supplements that are used by different feed companies to put in their feed products. And one of them is called Poultry Nutrition, and so he's added some of that. That's like a vitamin and mineral pack. Excuse me. This feed formula also contains fish meal, and oyster shell, and an extra supplement of the amino acids lysine, threonine, and methionine. So he's added some more of that to help bring those amino acid levels up. And then they have another feed supplement product called RC Gold. And so he's added some of that. So what the guaranteed analysis is of this particular, what he thinks of as a perfect feed, is 18% protein, 5% fat, about 4.5% fiber. So you can see the fat's pretty much up there with the one feed. and a lot less fiber than that less expensive feed. That less expensive feed, 8% fiber, is crazy. Too much. The calcium at 3%, the phosphorus is 0.7. That's probably the maximum, and the average is 0.5. There's some salt added at 0.3%. That's the total sodium is 0.162, so a little over 1.1. M-E. Oh, that's if you see M period, E period in a formula, that stands for has to do with metabolic, metabolizal, okay. The amount of energy that the bird can metabolize from this, he's got at just over 1,200 kilocalories per pound of feed. Okay, that's just kind of like your how much energy calories does the feed have. Vitamin E at 7,000 international units a pound, to vitamin D at 2,000 internationals per pound, and vitamin E at 72 international units per pound. He also is listing choline, which is choline. That is an amino acid that is important for some body functions, at 699 milligrams per pound, and niacin at 35 milligrams per pound. Niacin, which is vitamin B12. No, that's thiamine. I'll have to go double check. Niacin is a very important B vitamin that really is necessary for a lot of things. Lysine at 1.153%. Methionine at 0.498%, so almost 0.5%. Threonine at 0.788%. And then manganese, zinc, iron, copper, iodine, selenium, and those are all very close to the other Piper of the requirements, what the birds require in a breeder feed. Okay, so now I want to go over some of these areas, and I'm going to tell you what you might see if you don't have enough of certain things, or what you might see if you have too much. Okay, so crude protein, that's your total protein, you know, so like we have this layer feed that's 21% protein, that's the crude protein, and then we have the layer that's only 16% protein. If you don't have enough total protein, crude protein, you're going to have decreased egg size and less of them. And you're going to have poor chick quality. So your chicks are not going to be very lively. They're not going to be very healthy. They're not going to be vigorous. If you have too much protein, you're going to have really big eggs. So you've increased your egg size, but you're going to have lower hatchability. They aren't going to hatch as well or as easily. And increase stress on the body. Okay, energy, which is your calories. If you don't have enough calories, then you have low body weight and you have low egg numbers. If you have too many calories, you have an increased chance of double yolks, oversized eggs, and you have late fertility, so your birds are going to be later coming into lay. Your males are going to be later becoming fertile, and your eggs are not going to be fertilized. And late hatchability, so not very good hatching quality if you have too much protein. Okay, lysine, methionine, and cysteine are 3 of those important amino acids. If you don't have enough, you're going to have decreased egg size and decreased egg numbers. Too much is a waste of many. So having those amino acids at a higher level than what's recommended doesn't do anything good, doesn't do anything for the chickens, and you're just wasting your money. Okay, if you don't have enough calcium, then you have poor shell quality. Eggs that, I have seen eggs in the past, especially from old hens, that had a little tiny hole right at one end. So as the egg is coming down the part of the reproductive tract where the shell is being laid on, it's kind of like they got to the end and they ran out of calcium, so there's this little tiny hole right on one end. And you can tell it's not a puncture hole. It's not where they hit it with their toenail or something, because it's not cracked and it's not dented. It's just like a perfect little hole just in the shell. But if you have too much calcium, then other nutrients availability is reduced. So if you have too much calcium, then they can't absorb and utilize some of the other vitamins and minerals that they need to be able to have in their bodies. Available phosphorus, if you are too far under the recommended amounts, it can impair your egg production and hatchability, and it may reduce, it says, may reduce bone ash in chicks. I'm going to think when we talk about ash in some context, that's where if you took the skeleton and burnt it to ash so that you just have the solid mineral part of the bones. So that's like bone density. You don't have enough bone density in your chicks if you don't have enough phosphorus. But if you have too much phosphorus, you could have poor eggshell quality, because you've got to have a balance between calcium and phosphorus for good shells. So as you can see, feed, it can be very complicated. It can be very complex. A lot of it can have to do with what do you want out of your birds, what's available to you, what kind of minerals are in the ground, the soil where your feed is grown, whether that's your backyard or whether that's someplace hundreds of miles away from you. I'm going to list a lot of resources down in the description so that you can go and read and print some of these out for yourself. Compare your feed tags, because really I blacked out those name brands, because it's not so much the name brand as it is what did they put in the bag. You know, how close can you get to your requirements, the ideal. So for instance, I do feed the 21% protein feed, but I will say I do not feed exactly the same all year long. In the fall and over the winter, when egg production is naturally down because we were molting, and then we have short days, because hens do not lay unless they have enough daylight to trigger their pituitary to make the hormones that they need to lay. Then I switched to the 16% layer for 2 or 3 months over the winter to it's a little less expense on my end. Plus, they don't need all of the protein and everything. And scratch. Please don't just feed scratch to your chickens. Please don't. Especially not young birds, because they're still growing and they need a complete balanced diet. Scratch is kind of like candy. And if you're only feeding scratch, it's a little bit like you just fed your kids candy 3 meals a day. Okay? It's mostly fat and very low protein. If you go look at the feed tag on a bag of scratch, I think it's about 9% protein. Okay? That's a far cry from 18%. That's only half as much protein as the minimum they need. Okay? So in the winter, I do add some scratch to their diet. I feed them a little scratch in the afternoon because it will give them some extra calories that they do need to help stay warm over the winter. Okay? But I don't want to overdo it and have them get fat, because fat hens don't lay. Fat chickens don't lay eggs because they're full of fat and there's no room for them to make any eggs. What else do I want to talk about? Fertrell does make a couple of different supplements that you can purchase. Some people might consider them a little pricey. I haven't checked pricing on it in a while, but it is a powdered supplement that, if maybe you can only get the 16% protein feed, you could purchase the supplement. Jeff recommends adding a small amount of vegetable oil to your feed and mixing that in well before adding in the supplement. The supplement's a powder, and it will stick to the oil. So like if you're feeding a pelleted feed, you would add oil, mix it in real good, then add the powder and mix it in real good, and the powder will stick to the oil on the pellets. And that's one way you can up your nutrition if you can't get a really good layer feed in your area. Other things you can do is, especially if you can't get enough, say, methionine and lysine and those amino acids, you can add some like fish. So like fish meal. You can add, some folks will just feed a can of tuna once or twice a week to birds. If you have people that go fishing, you can get their fish waste and just chop it or grind it and add a small amount out in a pan and let the birds have it free choice. Lots of different ways to add some extra protein and amino acids. Some other things are, if maybe your feed's a little low in like vitamin A, dark green leafy vegetables, especially those with red tint to them, are high in that beta carotene. Your carrot peelings, your red Swiss chard, things like that. So there's lots of different things you can do and you can mix in. I'm not in a position where I can make my own feeds because I don't live in a farming community. I live in a mining community. There's a few of us like me that have little tiny backyard farms. There's nothing around me where there's acres of field crops. Those are 100 miles away from me. And that's not easy for me to go find a feed mill and have them make something up to to my formula, I would probably have to buy 1 or 2 tons at a time, and that's a whole different thing, okay? So we're just going to work with what we can get at our local feed store and just try to work with that. So if your birds have not been laying over the winter, that's normal, okay, because the days are too short to trigger the hormones that they need. But as we come into 12 to 14 hour days, you should see your egg production going up. If not, look around for broken shells and evidence of eggs being eaten. Most of the time, eggs are eaten because they broke. In my experience, it's fairly rare to have an actually determined egg eater, one that will actually attack eggs that they see as soon as they see them that aren't broken open. So most of the time, an egg that gets broken is going to be, there will be a feeding frenzy, and they will gobble up every last bit of it, including the shell. Occasionally you might find just little pieces of shell here or there, or you'll see yellow yolk on their beaks and their faces where they were eating it. For them to clean it up is normal, okay? It means that you didn't have enough calcium, phosphorus, vitamin D. Something's wrong someplace. You don't have enough nutrients to have a hard eggshell so that it doesn't get broken after it's laid. What else do we want to talk about? Let me know down in the comments if you have comments, questions. There's 1,000 ways to raise chickens. There are a lot of different scenarios, okay? There's lots of folks out there that are raising chickens on compost piles, and they're very happy with the amount of money they're putting into them and the number of eggs they're getting out. It might not be maximum production. Maybe that's not your goal. Maybe your goal is whatever you can get for $0. And that's fine. That's a perfectly acceptable goal to have. It really is. But my goal with this group of birds is I want to have good fertility, good hatchability. That means good eggshell quality. That means that the chicks develop properly in the incubator and that they hatch out vigorously when they are supposed to, and they get right up and get to business, being babies and growing. So that's why I'm always looking at my overall nutrition picture, because that's what I want to see happen. My goals in my layer flock are a little bit different. My layer flock is mostly birds that didn't make the cut as breeders, as well as a few mixed breed hens. And those birds is perfectly fine. Their main purpose is to produce table eggs. That's their main purpose. I will be hatching a few of their eggs this year because I have a kind of a little breeding project over there. So I do still need good shell quality and good hatchability and good fertility. So I will follow the general guidelines for their feeding also. At the same time, chickens are great recyclers. They can recycle food waste and some things that we can't or don't want to eat into a great, almost perfect protein food for people. And carnivorous, omnivorous animals like dogs, cats, and pigs. So those are all great things. So anyway, I hope I haven't been too long-winded, and I hope I made sense. So if y'all have any questions or if something wasn't clear, just comment down below. Check out all the links I'm going to add in here because there's going to be a lot. Okay? Y'all have a great day and happy hatching.